Gruff, thank you very much for joining us. Just going to have a little chat, focusing around your area of the team, the Backs, as we go into a very busy period of rugby, an important period of Pro 12 rugby. As we speak, we're sitting at the top of the table and we're in a good position, but with these run of games coming up, it's really going to test this group of players that we've got here at the moment.
Yeah, it will do. I suppose you look at the last couple of years, these sort of periods have been challenging for us in terms of the games we've played, the quality of opposition, and really testing sort of the depth of the squad. And probably this year even more so. We had some real tough encounters, Leinster away, Ulster away in the autumn period. But the group responded really well to that, having to go to Leinster, who were pretty strong at the back end of November, and fronting up and being in both games within the last 10 minutes was a huge effort from the players. And even more so now, perhaps this year, when you look at the way the competition's structured, a side like Edinburgh have probably got a real carrot in terms of them being motivated to get results and potentially get a Champions Cup spot next year. And so obviously we've got to go there and show some of what we've done over the last few weeks. The Bath game was a good little lead in for us in terms of some of our structures of play, and obviously players getting game time, so hopefully we can hit the ground running. And thereafter playing obviously three of the other big sides in the league, it's going to be a huge challenge, but one we should be really excited about.
At this time of the year, we're obviously missing some key players across the field. We're away with Wales, but looking at the back specifically, that's where you're interested in. With Dan and Rees away, they've been two influential figures throughout our run in the Pro 12 this season. But on the flip side of it, it's an opportunity for some players to step up and really show what they're about.
It is, and we've got to keep challenging the group. And our theme with the Backs, and over the last couple of years, as I said, there's times we've been brittle in terms of numbers, but we've constantly tried to challenge whoever they are, young or old, but especially players coming into the environment, to be good learners in terms of problem solving aspects of what we do, and we're continually adapting the work we do. Some of what we do now is unrecognisable from a few years ago with some of the intricacies and level of detail. So they've got to have that level of rugby intelligence and emotional intelligence, and I think we're starting to see that with some of our players. Sam Davis, is a wonderfully gifted player, but starting to see the game in a way that suits us and his game going forward. You see, people like Grabham coming in, adapting and understanding his role, and these are the guys who are going to be at the fore of this next block of games. And likewise, people like Dan and Josh have come in through the course of the year, made a big impression, and we need these guys to step up. It's a huge block of games for us, and I want the other boys to come back in with some points on the board, but also some training standards continuing to be high. We don't just drift from week to week, and these boys have got to live that.
When you look at this block of fixtures, how do you prepare for them? Is it strictly one game at a time, or do you prepare for Edinburgh perhaps with one eye looking a little further ahead?
No, by and large, we are about winning rugby games. We prepare the side, we pick a side, each around understanding the tactical requirements of the game and the individual components of their job description that helps us win a game on a Saturday. But I think what we're also about is challenging the players to be better. And there's a big focus around their skill development, their game understanding. I like to think we've got a pretty basic theme of how we play the game in terms of the backs roles, how the backs interact with forwards, and how we try and create an attacking and defensive structure that suits us. But within that, there's levels of detail that they have to get right. So for us, it's about being on top of that in each and every week to get the win, hopefully on the weekend, based around opposition opportunities that may be there, but also trying to challenge them to be better in the medium to long term. And I think it's about every player, again, be they young or old, trying to come to the Ospreys and day in, day out be the best they can be.
You've mentioned Josh and Dan Evans. They're two players that we recruited in the summer, brought in to do a specific job, and you must be pretty pleased with the impact that they've made in the team so far this season.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were, keen in terms of knowing what we wanted from the 15 position, in terms of real thorough job description, and sort of a physical presence at 12 who can actually pick his head up, take the heat off the 10, and get the best other people around him. And clearly Josh has had an impact in that area, and likewise, as I said, Dan understanding the positional requirements of that 15 shirt, but also there where and how he can apply his skill set positively on the game. We were really confident of both guys coming in, and they've surpassed expectations also in terms of how they've adapted to things that we're looking at. And as I said, both good learners, and I think if you don't learn and adapt, you will die around the pro game, but probably us more than anyone.
Are there any other players, perhaps looking at the younger end of the spectrum, that you've been impressed with this season in terms of the progress and the development?
I've probably name-checked someone like Sam Davis is continually not just relying on gut instinct and individual ability to get him through games now. He's perhaps seeing how he can impose himself on the game and get the best out of others. Something that we've seen from Dan Biggar over a period of time. But there's a framework where he can solve problems but actually understand the team pattern. And so we're challenging him as a player, but getting, I think, somewhere down the line is going to be a top unbelievable player there. He's getting on that pathway pretty fast now, and is adapting well to what we do. Again, I've mentioned Grabham as a real learner who doesn't just apply himself physically in terms of week in, week out, but understands all the small components of the game which actually put him in positions to carry the ball effectively. He knows defensively when to drop off based on the opposition body language of their kicking game. So we're starting to show a bit of smartness with some of those players. But what's also pleasing is that we're constantly looking to develop the group for the future. And there's players who've come in recently around the LV have got a taste of it, and I'm excited by what we're doing around our succession planning of backs also.
You talk about the succession planning. Obviously it's hugely important for the long-term future and sustainability of the Ospreys, but how involved are you in that with the other heads of department, the other, the likes of Tom Smith, Andy Lloyd, recruitment retention? Do you get much work, much involvement with them on a day-to-day basis?
We're a fully integrated operational rugby model. I know that sounds very business-like, but it is about just in common sense terms, people talking together through departments. We talked about recruitment in terms of Josh and Dan. As a rugby group, we're obviously heavily working closely with obviously our bosses in terms of budgets. But Andy Lloyd, first and foremost, needs to know what we want from the rugby players we're trying to recruit, and then, as importantly, if not more importantly, Tom Smith, Dan Griffiths, Mike Hook in terms of the development department know exactly the type of players we want coming through in each and every one of those shirts. The job description of a 15, the job description of the 9. These guys know it. They understand what we're seeing around the young players. And then, for me, it's around looking around this year now. The under-16s games are coming onto the radar. But I've been thrilled to look around the 18s and the progress they made, and credit to the coaching team there. But seeing players I've looked at in snippets at 16s start to show more at 18s, and there's been a real spark around 3 or 4 players of them who I won't name check, but they're heavily on our radar. We've had 1 or 2 of them involved in LV preparations, and then obviously we know that we're trying to fill some gaps as we go through the next 12 months, 18 months, 3 years of our cycle of work, so that we're constantly looking at where these players are going to fit in. And someone like Dav Howells would be a good example. He seems to have been with us a fair while, but it's been slow and steady in terms of monitoring him, working with the individual, that we think there's areas tactically, technically and mentally that he's worked on heavily, that he's close to being involved on a regular basis for us. But it's not see them and throw them in. I think we're emotionally understanding the challenges that these guys have coming through the systems and the different sort of pressures that can exist, and supporting them through it, but also understanding the keen rugby eye and understanding these players have to pick up to actually come through and succeed at the pro level.
I think a good way it was described to me once is it's a little bit like a jigsaw, where all the pieces are in the room, but you're not quite sure where in the room they are. So It takes a little bit of time to scour around and pick up the little pieces, and eventually you get them all fitting together. I think that's probably what recruitment and development is all about.
It is, and some of them, again, it's about some players who may need a prod, and a lot of players just needing the arm and just gentle nurturing. But it's about being specific what you want in terms of behaviours, but also the rugby itself. I like the analogy. Some players may be a 4-piece jigsaw, and they're pretty straightforward. You can do this, that, and they're not going to be far off. Some of them can be more complex, but for some they're so close yet so far away. And it's about just bridging that gap, as I said, sometimes quickly, but sometimes knowing you've got to take a breath and actually see players through to the sort of nth degree.
I spoke recently with Andrew Hoare for Ospreys TV, and despite the obvious challenges that are ongoing that we face as a business, He was pretty positive about the future of the region, and he painted a picture that was one that was pleasing for supporters, I think. Do you share that same mindset? I suppose you do.
Yeah, you've got to be. I think, rightly so, we know where we are, in terms of being financially challenged at times, but we are excited about how we work together closely across departments. We try and maximise everything we've got to do, and we leave generally no stone unturned in terms of looking at every individual player, how we can make him better, how his relationship is with his peers, how we can actually accelerate some of the learning, and you've got to be excited by what we do day in, day out. We're, it's a vibrant rugby area. We're blessed with talent, and we've got to try and maximise what we've got coming through around a hardcore of, I find, good, loyal, supportive fans who are there for us, supporting us through good and sometimes some harder times over the last couple of years. But for me, I can hopefully see light at the end of the tunnel, and I think, again, talk about succession planning and where we think we can take the group. I've got to be positive. I'm seeing progress in our current group, and likewise, if we can get it right with the next wave coming through, we won't be far off.